Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time, we're really getting into some fascinating stuff with AI. We're going to be taking a look at the work of Dan Jurafsky.
Oh, yeah, Jurafsky.
Yeah, and we've got this great essay from AIVIPist.org all about him. It's amazing to think about all the ways that AI is changing our world, and especially how people like Jurafsky are leading the charge.
It's incredible how he's combined linguistics and computer science. Like, you wouldn't really think those two fields would go together, but his work shows just how connected they really are.
Yeah, it's like, on the one hand, you've got the rules of language and the grammar, the structure of sentences. Then on the other hand, you've got these super complex algorithms and massive data sets. It's wild that they can all work together to help computers understand us humans better.
Yeah, that's really one of the biggest challenges in AI research right now. Getting machines to really understand how nuanced human language is. I mean, think about it. We use slang and sarcasm and idioms all the time. All sorts of things that go way beyond just the literal meaning of the words.
Totally. If I told a computer that movie was fire, I'd hope it wouldn't actually call the fire department. But getting a machine to understand that I'm using figurative language, that's a whole other level of complexity.
Exactly. And that's where Jurafsky's research is so important. He's created techniques that help computers understand those layers of meaning. Like, for example, he was one of the pioneers in using probability and statistics in linguistic analysis.
Probability and statistics.
Yeah.
To understand language. That sounds a bit mathy.
I know, right? It might seem counterintuitive, but language is actually full of randomness. We don't always follow the rules perfectly, and we're always making choices about how we express ourselves. So by applying statistical models, Jurafsky helped computers learn to recognize those patterns and make better predictions about what we mean, even when we're not being super conventional with our language.
So instead of just relying on strict grammatical rules, computers can now pick up on the subtleties of how we actually use language, even with all our quirks and, deviations from the rules. That's pretty cool.
It is, and this approach has been super important to some of the most exciting developments in AI, like all the amazing work coming out of the Stanford NLP group, which, by the way, Jurafsky founded.
Oh, yeah. The essay mentioned that group. They seem to be doing some really groundbreaking work. Can you tell us more about what they're up to?
Oh, they're doing incredible stuff. One area where they've made huge progress is in sentiment analysis, trying to figure out if a piece of text is positive or negative.
Yeah, I've heard of that. It's used a lot in marketing and social media to track how people feel about brands and products, right?
Right. But the Stanford NLP group is going way beyond just labeling something as positive or negative. They're actually working on identifying specific emotions like joy, sadness, anger, even things like sarcasm and irony. They're trying to get a much deeper and more nuanced understanding of how people feel.
Wow, that's really impressive. But how do they manage to capture those subtle shades of meaning? It seems like that would be really difficult for a computer to do.
Well, it involves training AI models on huge amounts of data. But it's not just about the quantity. It's about the quality and diversity of the data, too. For example, they might train a model on a data set of movie reviews that have been carefully labeled with specific emotions. That way, the AI can learn to associate certain words and phrases and even punctuation patterns with particular emotional states.
So it's kind of like teaching the AI to read between the lines, to pick up on all those subtle cues that we humans use to convey emotion.
Exactly. And the more data they can feed into these models, the better they become at understanding all the complex ways we express ourselves.
So this means companies could get a much more accurate picture of how their customers are feeling beyond just a simple thumbs up or thumbs down.
Exactly. They could identify specific pain points, areas where customers are frustrated, or even see opportunities to create products and services that really meet people's emotional needs.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting for me. The essay also mentioned Jurafsky's work on dialogue systems and chatbots. Is that connected to the sentiment analysis research at all?
Absolutely. One of the biggest challenges with chatbots is making them feel more natural, less robotic in their interactions. And understanding the emotional subtext of a conversation is a big part of that.
So it's not just about giving the right response. It's about giving it in the right way, with the right tone and emotional sensitivity.
Exactly. Think about how you talk to a friend compared to how you might talk to someone who works at customer service. The words you use might be similar, but the tone, the pacing, those subtle cues you give off will be totally different.
That's so true. It's something we never really think about because it's so natural for us as humans. But for a machine, It's incredibly complex.
It really is, and that's what makes Jurafsky's work so important. He's helping bridge that gap between human and machine communication, one subtle cue at a time.
It's amazing how all these different areas of research are connected. I'm curious, though, did Jurafsky always focus on text? Or did his work also extend to other areas of language processing?
That's a great question. It actually leads us to another one of his groundbreaking contributions: integrating speech recognition with language models. You know, the technology behind things like Siri and Alexa.
Oh yeah, for sure. I use those all the time. It's amazing how well they can understand what I'm saying, even when I'm mumbling or have an accent.
Well, that's thanks in part to Jurafsky's work. He realized that to really understand speech, you need to combine the study of sounds, what we call acoustics, with the analysis of language itself.
So it's not enough for a computer to just recognize the individual words I'm saying. It also has to understand how those words fit together in a sentence and how the tone and inflection of my voice contribute to the meaning.
Exactly. It's about understanding the whole picture, the way all of those elements come together to create meaning. And this was a major breakthrough in speech recognition.
It really makes you appreciate how much is going on behind the scenes every time you ask Siri for the weather forecast.
Oh, absolutely. It's incredibly complex. But Jurafsky's work helped make it all possible. And it's not just about understanding speech either. He's also done a lot of important work in speech synthesis, making those computer-generated voices sound more natural and more human-like.
Ah, so he's the reason we have those super realistic computer voices in movies and video games.
You got it. It's all about making those synthetic voices sound less robotic and more expressive.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from parsing and semantic analysis to sentiment analysis, speech recognition, and even speech synthesis. It's clear that Jurafsky has had a major impact on how AI understands language.
He's definitely a pioneer in the field, and his work has had a huge impact on the technologies that we use every day. But what's really cool is that Jurafsky doesn't just focus on the technical stuff. He's also really concerned about the ethical side of AI and how it affects people's lives.
Oh, that's interesting. The essay mentioned something about bias in AI. What exactly did they mean by that?
Well, it's like this AI systems learn from the data that they're trained on, right? And if that data reflects the biases that already exist in society, then the AI can end up perpetuating those biases sometimes in ways that we don't even realize.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Imagine you're building an AI system to help make hiring decisions. So you train it on a data set of resumes from a company that has mostly hired men for leadership positions in the past. Well, the AI might learn to associate certain keywords or phrases that are more common in men's resumes with successful candidates.
So even though you're not specifically telling the AI to prefer male candidates, it could still learn to do that just based on the patterns in the data.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where things can get a little tricky. These biases can be really subtle and hard to spot, but they can have real consequences in the real world.
That's a pretty scary thought, to be honest. It seems like there's a lot of responsibility that comes with developing these AI systems.
Absolutely. And Jurafsky is really outspoken about the need for what he calls responsible AI development. He believes we have to be aware of the potential for bias and work to stop it.
So how do you actually go about doing that?
Well, there are a few different approaches. One is to be really careful about the data that you use to train your AI systems. You want to make sure that it's as diverse and representative as possible.
So like we're talking about that hiring AI, you want to make sure that the data set includes resumes from a bunch of different people with all sorts of backgrounds and experiences.
Right. You want the AI to be learning from a really wide range of human expression, not just a narrow slice of it.
That makes sense. But it also sounds like a huge challenge. Like, how can you be sure that your data is truly representative of everyone?
It's definitely not easy. But there are groups and researchers who are working on creating data sets for AI training that are more inclusive. And there are techniques that you can use to find and fix bias in data sets that already exist.
That's good to know. It sounds like there's a growing awareness of these issues and a real effort to address them.
There is, and that's encouraging. But it's important to remember that this is an ongoing challenge. As AI gets more advanced and integrated into our lives, we need to stay vigilant about the possibility for bias and work to build AI systems that are fair and equitable for everyone.
Speaking of AI becoming more a part of our lives, the essay also talked about how Jurafsky wants to make AI more human-centered. What exactly does that mean?
It means designing AI systems that are really in tune with human needs and values. It's not just about making AI smarter, it's about making it more empathetic and more understanding of how complex human communication really is.
So instead of just focusing on efficiency and getting the right answer, it's about considering things like empathy and emotional intelligence.
Yeah, exactly. It's about understanding that AI isn't just interacting with data points, it's interacting with people. And people have feelings and motivations and goals that the AI needs to take into account.
I really like that idea. It feels like a much more human way to approach AI development.
And it is, and it's something that Jurafsky's really passionate about. He believes that AI can make our lives better in all kinds of ways, but only if we design it with human values in mind.
One of the ways he's doing that is by focusing on personalization, right?
That's right. Right now, most AI systems treat all users the same way. But we know that everyone communicates differently. Everyone has different backgrounds and experiences and ways of expressing themselves.
It's like we all have our own unique communication style. Some people are super direct, others are more subtle. Some people love to use humor, others are more serious.
Exactly. And an AI system that's truly human-centered would be able to recognize and adapt to those individual differences. It would be like talking to someone who really gets you, who understands your quirks and the way you communicate.
That would be amazing. But how realistic is that? I mean,
Really?
can AI really get that good at understanding all the subtleties of human personality and communication?
It's a really tough goal, but Jurafsky thinks it's possible. He's looking for ways to use insights from fields like psychology and linguistics to create AI systems that are better at understanding the nuances of human communication.
So instead of just analyzing the words we use, AI could also consider things like our tone of voice, our facial expressions, our body language.
Exactly. It's about looking at the whole picture, all the different ways that we communicate both verbally and non-verbally.
That's so cool. It sounds like we're moving towards a future where AI can not only understand what we're saying, but also how we're feeling and what we really mean, even if we don't actually say it.
It's a really exciting possibility, and it has the potential to totally change the way we interact with technology. Imagine a virtual assistant that can answer your questions and offer support if you're feeling down, or celebrate your achievements with genuine excitement.
That sounds amazing. But it also raises some interesting questions about privacy and boundaries. I mean, if AI gets that good at understanding us, does that mean our thoughts aren't really our own anymore?
That's a really important point, and it's something we have to think carefully about as we develop these more sophisticated AI systems. We need to find a balance between creating AI that's helpful and supportive without being intrusive or overstepping any boundaries.
It's a complex issue, but it's one we have to face head on. As AI becomes more integrated into our lives, we have to make sure that it respects our autonomy and our privacy.
Definitely. And that brings us back to why responsible AI development is so crucial. It's not just about building cool new technology, it's about building technology that benefits humanity and improves our lives in a way that's ethical and sustainable.
I'm curious, does Jurafsky's work address anything else about human communication besides personalization and emotional intelligence?
One area that's really important to him is cultural awareness. As we were talking about before, language is really closely tied to culture. Different cultures have different ways of expressing themselves and different norms for being polite. They have different values and beliefs that shape how they communicate.
I know exactly what you mean. Even just within English-speaking cultures, there can be huge differences in how people communicate. What might be considered polite or funny in one culture could be seen as rude or offensive in another.
Right. And as AI becomes more global, it's super important that it doesn't just reflect the values and biases of one dominant culture. It needs to be able to understand and adapt to all the amazing diversity of human expression that exists around the world.
So how do you actually make AI more culturally aware?
Well, one important thing is to train AI systems on data that represents different cultures and languages. That means not just taking text from the internet, but actively looking for data from groups that are often overlooked, from people who speak less common languages, and from different cultural contexts.
It sounds like that would take a lot of collaboration and work with different communities.
It does, and it's not always easy. But it's essential if we want to build AI that's truly inclusive and fair. We need to make sure that everyone's voice is heard and represented in the data that shapes these powerful technologies.
It's amazing to think that AI could actually help us bridge the gaps between different cultures by helping us understand each other's ways of communicating.
That's a really powerful idea, and it's one of the things that makes this field so exciting. It's not just about the technology, it's about using technology to connect with each other in deeper and more meaningful ways.
You know, this conversation has really changed how I think about AI. I used to see it as something kind of cold and calculated, but now I see how much potential it has for warmth, connection, understanding.
That's what's so inspiring about Jurafsky's work. He's not just pushing the limits of technology, he's pushing the limits of what we think is possible when humans and machines interact.
It makes you wonder what else the future of AI has in store for us.
That's what's so exciting. We're just at the beginning of this journey, and with brilliant people like Jurafsky leading the way, I'm optimistic about what we can accomplish.
It really does feel like we're just scratching the surface of what's possible with AI. This whole deep dive has me thinking about the big picture. What happens if AI actually gets so good at understanding us that it's even better than we are at understanding each other?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Some people think it'll be like a utopia where AI helps us break down communication barriers and understand each other on a whole new level. But others worry about the risks, like what if AI starts manipulating us or takes away our privacy?
It's a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it? The potential for good is huge, but so is the potential for things to go wrong.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to have these conversations now while we're still early in the development of AI. We have to think critically about the values that we're building into these systems and make sure that we have safeguards in place.
Let's try a thought experiment. Imagine that we've reached that point where AI can understand every little nuance of human language, even the things we don't say out loud. What would that world actually look like?
Well, for one thing, I think it would completely change how we interact with technology. Imagine talking to your computer or your smartphone just like you talk to a friend. You could express your needs and wants in a way that's totally clear and natural.
No more struggling to find the right words or getting annoyed when your device doesn't understand what you mean.
Right. Communicating with technology would be so easy and intuitive. But it's not just about convenience. Think about fields like diplomacy, where misunderstandings can lead to serious problems. AI could help negotiators from different countries and cultures find common ground by understanding all the subtleties of language and even body language.
That would be incredible. It could help prevent conflicts and encourage countries to work together.
It could totally revolutionize education, too. Imagine having personalized learning experiences designed for each student's needs and learning style. AI tutors could give feedback in real time and help students understand concepts more effectively so they can reach their full potential.
And what about healthcare? AI could listen to patient conversations and analyze medical records to identify potential health issues or make more accurate diagnoses. That would mean earlier interventions and better outcomes for patients.
The possibilities are pretty mind-blowing. But of course, we can't forget about the potential downsides. Like we talked about earlier, the problem of bias in AI is a big concern. If we train AI on data that reflects existing societal prejudices, those biases could be amplified and cause real harm, even if that's not what anyone intended.
It's like the old saying, garbage in, garbage out. If we feed AI systems biased data, we can't expect them to give us unbiased results.
Exactly. So we have to be super careful about the data that we use to train these systems. We need to make sure it's diverse and representative and doesn't include harmful biases. And we also have to develop ways to monitor and correct for bias in AI systems once they're out in the world.
What about the impact on human creativity? If AI can write text that sounds just like a human wrote it, what does that mean for things like art, literature, and music?
That's such a fascinating question. Some people think AI will make human creativity obsolete. But personally, I think AI is more likely to become a tool that we can use to enhance our own creativity. It could help us explore new artistic possibilities and express ourselves in ways we never could before.
So AI could be more like a collaborator than a competitor.
Exactly. Imagine AI helping you overcome writer's block, or compose new music, or create amazing works of art that you couldn't have come up with on your own. It could open up a whole new world of creative expression.
It's exciting and a little bit scary to think about how much AI could change our lives. It feels like we're at a pivotal moment where we have the power to shape the future in profound ways.
We are, and it's up to all of us to participate in these conversations and think critically about the ethical aspects of AI. We have to work together to create a future where technology benefits humanity and improves our lives in positive and meaningful ways.
This deep dive has really given me a lot to think about. It's clear that Dan Jurafsky's work isn't just about making AI more advanced. It's about understanding what it means to be human in a world where machines are getting smarter all the time.
It's a journey we're all on together. And with people like Jurafsky leading the charge, I think the future of AI is looking bright.
If you're as fascinated by this topic as we are, I highly recommend checking out that essay we mentioned earlier on AIVIPS.org. It's packed with insights that will really get you thinking about the future of AI and how it might affect our lives. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.
See you on the next deep dive.